Hello there, and welcome to my channel. My name is Gleeman, and I am going to be responding to a YouTuber known as Lord Intellectual. He has expressed a desire to stimulate intellectual conversation between those of us on YouTube, and I'm assuming as well across other social media platforms. And I would like to participate in that kind of conversation. I find it very intriguing and mentally stimulating. So I will preface this in saying that I am not an expert in this field. I'm very much a layman, and I am coming into this with all humility and respect. Most of this video will be me asking clarifying questions and laying down some of my perspectives on the topic. But let's head on into the video.
Welcome all, and thank you so much for stopping by. I have a video here today straight from the algorithm. This one came up into my recommended feed, and I'd not come across Mr. Nulli before. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Mr. Nulli, if you are watching this and that's not right, please definitely correct me in the comments below. But I got about 30 seconds into this video and immediately knew I had to react to it. It seems extremely relevant to this channel, and it seems like the algorithm is starting to get a bead on the types of things I like to see. So, without further ado, let's give it a watch, and you tell me why you think I would be interested in this, and let's see how it goes.
Stupidity is more dangerous than evil. Evil.
Okay, right from the get-go, there are a few questions that I have that I hope the video or Mr. Nulli or Lord Intellectual would cover in this topic. One, the statement is stupidity is more dangerous than evil. How do we define evil in this case? I think that would be something that needs to be grounded before we continue. And in the same vein, if stupidity is more dangerous than evil, would that not be simply a case of stupidity is a greater evil? Those are just a few questions that come to mind.
Wants something. Evil knows it is crossing a line. Evil can be exposed, resisted, even fought. But stupidity never feels dangerous. It feels normal.
So, again, evil is stated as this certain concept, but as we've seen throughout history, evil changes in definition when it comes to the people stating that something is evil. So, as far as this statement goes, it's a bit difficult to agree to this statement when we don't have the concept of the writer's definition of evil.
Feels reasonable. It feels like common sense, shared by everyone around you. That sentence was written by Dietrich Bonhoeffer while he was locked inside a Nazi prison, waiting for execution. And what terrified him most was ordinary people who stopped thinking and started repeating.
And see, that's about the point where I realized, I must react to this, because one of my greatest fears is the idea of an idiocracy, which I refer to because of the old movie Idiocracy, which was critically sabotaged at the box office, unfortunately. But it got criticized because on the surface it seems an extension of dysgenics, and whilst eugenics...
So before we get into dysgenics and eugenics, I did want to comment on idiocracy. I currently, sorry, I can relate somewhat in that I am not a fan of individuals who make decisions without consideration of the consequences, either in a personal scale or on a social scale, because I am an intelligent person, and I like to make sure that when I do something, I consider the ramifications of what it will do to me, for me, or do to someone else or for someone else. And so whenever I encounter individuals who don't have that same consideration, it is quite a bit off-putting. I will agree to that.
And dysgenics do have a scientific basis. It is a very unpopular opinion to talk about those because of their ties to a certain World War II regime, and you can tell exactly which one I'm referring to. But the idea is that the more intelligent you get, for the most part, the less children you'll have. Whereas the lower your IQ, the more children you'll have, because you will not be either aware or concerned of the consequences.
And this goes right into what I was talking about, as far as like idiocracy, or just I hate to call them stupid people as a general term, but because stupidity and the acts of stupidity are the framing of this video, I think we can run with that term. So, yes, stupid people will have more children because they do not think of the consequences of unprotected sex. And they do not have any consideration for their future, or for the child's future, or society's future in taking care of those children. So I see where Lord Intellectual is coming from in this regard.
And that movie, Idiocracy, makes an amazing portrayal of that within the first opening minutes. And whilst it is a little, extreme, it does cut to the heart of it. And that is ultimately one of my greatest fears, because humanity is...
Before we hop into the next part, something that I've observed is that this idea of dysgenics and Lord Intellectual's fear of it, with stupid people having more children than intelligent people, I think this is a cultural problem, where smarter people are discouraged from having large families. Even wealthy couples of intellect refrain from a large family because socially they are conditioned to be considerate of their own wealth, their own time, and living, quote unquote, their best life. And in Western culture today, there seems to be a stigma around having a large family. It's considered that's a tough one to elaborate on, but there just seems to be that stigma in saying that if you have a large family, this is a bad thing. It is not of your best interest to have a large family. And I think that is where a large problem with this dysgenics concept lies. It is not for us to stop stupid people from having children. It is to promote having children among the intelligent people. And yeah, I can expound that a little bit more if this discussion goes forward.
Cut to the heart of it, and that is ultimately one of my greatest fears, because humanity is beautiful, and I do.
So, with this statement from Lord Intellectual, I would like to pause. Humanity is beautiful, and my first questions about that would be, why is humanity beautiful? And let me have him.
Do have a lot of hope in humanity. As far
So, he also has a lot of hope in humanity. For what purpose?
as we are aware, we are the only intelligent beings within the galaxy, or well, I should say the universe, really. Now we can start to debate like whether or not that would actually be true and how likely it is, but as far as we know, we are the only intelligent species, which means our intelligence is the single greatest thing in the.
Okay, so I'm assuming that he is equating humanity's beauty in its intelligence, and he states that intelligence is the single greatest thing in the universe. My next question would be, why is that? Let's get into the heart of where he finds this sort of significance. The reason why I ask this is because I'm aware that Lord Intellectual doesn't believe in God. So I'm curious as to the purpose behind his exaltation of intelligence. What makes it great to him? For me, I love intelligence and I hold intelligence in high regard because intelligence is my way of understanding my creator and his creation. I believe creation is orderly and it is rational, coming from a rational creator, and therefore must be approached with reason and with respect. So I am looking for his definition or his explanation of why he believes these things.
Universe and must be protected at all costs. But it is fragile, as history shows, as current day events show. The act of critically thinking seems to be at risk, and that's half the.
Okay, so critical thinking is at risk, or seems to be at risk. Maybe. But this also seems to be simply a part of humanity's cycle that it goes through, where the population becomes complacent and negligent, and that will lead to a backstep or a falling away from a certain amount of progress with us. And once that happens, it's like the old axiom of hard times create strong men, strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, and it's thus the cycle. And in this manner, we might see that cycle come about as far as intelligence. Intelligence seems to thrive with hardship. That's humanity's lot. And I will admit that comes from a Christian perspective. I believe in the fall, and that we are cursed in this universe to struggle. And through that struggle, we grow. If we don't have that struggle, we slip from growth. So that's just a little bit of where my own worldview comes into play.
The reason I started the act of critically thinking seems to be at risk, and that's half the reason I started this channel as well, to try and get an intellectual voice out there. So I'm glad to see that something has finally come across my dash that seems to be in a similar vein. So let's continue.
Bonhoeffer realized something deeply uncomfortable. History's worst crimes were not carried out by monsters, but by neighbors, clerks, teachers, and citizens who believed they were doing the right thing because everyone else said so. Evil announces itself. Stupidity.
See, I want you to draw some parallels there, because a lot of the people on the left and in all the protests recently, whilst there.
So, but before he continues, I did want to stop and analyze that statement. These these evils were not committed by monsters, but by neighbors. This seems to be referencing the fact that you have your leaders and you have your followers. The followers will always outnumber the leaders. But this is talking specifically, I believe, about blind following, a blind faith, so to speak. I am a bit concerned with both Mr. Nulli and Lord Intellectual in the regard that they don't seem to take into consideration where the orders or the direction to these followers comes from. These orders or directions must come from somewhere, or it is the thought that mob mentality or the groupthink comes into play, and thus there is no evil directive that is being followed, merely a incoherent sort of madness that produces these actions, which I do not think that is what they mean, but I would like that portion of the result, the resulting evil, to be addressed. That the blind followers are following someone, and it is that someone who is giving them direction, whether that be good or evil.
There is a lot of performance going on there, and it is about that social cloud. It's not about the cause. It's look at me, look at how good I look supporting whatever the current darling cause is. There are a sprinkling of true believers mixed in there, the truly hysterical ones, and those true believers genuinely believe they are on the right side. And I've spoken at length about this before. We can refer back to the injured dog analogy, where basically they don't see these immigrants as threats and they don't see them as human. They see them as poor injured puppies that are coming up to you for help and need care. And
I actually quite like that analogy. I do wonder, though, what were the circumstances that preceded this viewpoint on illegal immigrants? How were their minds changed to see them as this injured puppy that needs to be protected, rather than a stray that should be kicked off the property? So And the reason why I bring that up is because we can see in our recent history that it wasn't always the viewpoint of the masses to view illegal immigrants in such a favorable way. So there must have been a coordinated effort to change the minds of the masses, or if not a majority, at least enough of the population to produce this outcome.
And whilst that is an incorrect take, that does explain the emotion behind it. That is why they genuinely believe they are on the right side of this, in complete defiance of all logic and all evidence to the contrary. But that is why we...
So, I want to touch on this a little bit later, but I would like to reference it here. I would like to establish the differences between logic and reason. Logic has a very hard structural framework, whereas reason is a little bit looser. It incorporates emotion, it incorporates instinct and other factors outside of just logic. And I wonder if Lord Intellectual would agree that while the people on the left are defying logic, would they still fall into the realm of reason, which I myself would say not quite, in fact, because as he put it, they do rely a lot more on emotion without thinking of consequence, and without making any sort of plans beyond I must do this good thing regardless of consequence, and which feeds back into the stupidity argument.
Don't want to lead with hate. You need to understand your opponent, because even if they're wrong, even though the left is extremely illogical at times, they are, and this is going to be an unpopular take, but for the most part, they still are intelligent, self-determining human beings. And
So this statement, intelligent, self-determining human beings. I do kind of want to reference Star Wars here. I'm a nerd. I apologize. But in the prequels, we have a statement from Qui-Gon Jinn in response to Jar Jar Binks, in that Jar Jar says that he can speak to symbolize his intelligence. And Qui-Gon Jinn answers, "The ability to speak does not make one intelligent." And so even in this case, intelligence is also a matter of perspective. So I would like to hammer out the definition of intelligence that Lord Intellectual is bringing to the table here. And as far as self-determining, there is a school of thought that those who live on their baser instincts are not self-determining, because and we are talking about stupid people, and one of those one of the categories that I place them in is the inability to think of the consequences, think of their future. And without thinking of the future, the consequences of their actions, could we say that they are self-determining, or are they slaves to their instincts, slaves to the whims of the now? So that would be something to add a little bit of clarity.
They need to be treated as such. I try.
I will say that while I question his categorization of stupid people, well, I apologize. I just equated the left with stupid people, and that is a fault of mine. I apologize. The left are to be respected to some degree, and I believe we should show them compassion as well. That comes from my Christian standpoint. I believe that we are all created in the image of God and all deserve love, compassion, and to a degree, respect. I am sad to say that I am not as as holy and without sin to not hold some sort of disregard for other people if they don't respect me first. So, yeah, again, that is a fault of mine, but I digress.
Really hard when I'm approaching the true believers, even though I know it's almost certainly a lost cause. I try to approach it from the idea that here is someone who has had a corrupting influence. They're not.
So, something here is a corrupting influence. By whom and for what purpose, if any? Wouldn't that corrupting influence be the evil that we have been discussing so far, where the stupid people or the followers are following evil influences? So again, just wanting to break these concepts down so that we can expand upon them and we have a firmer grasp of what is being addressed here.
Here is someone who has had a corrupting influence. They're not dumb. They might just not have the. They might not have the correct structure of neurons that allow them to see the issues, that allow them to deconstruct the propaganda, that allow them.
So this might be a matter of not wanting to be derogatory, but wouldn't the definition in this case of a dumb person be someone who does not have the capacity to think things through, to discern for themselves what a directive or some sort of influence might be leading them to do? Yeah, that is just another thing to parse out here.
Them to exert that logic and that critical thinking and that self-reflection. So what has gone wrong here? How can I help correct this person for the most part? Correct is a bit of a strong word, but
it is a strong word, but in this case, I believe you are correct with using it here. If we see that someone has gone wrong, then our instinct or our intellect would tell us that it needs to be corrected, and therefore we would have to correct the person in this regard.
If you're ignoring the scientific method, then you're almost certainly on the wrong side here.
That's an interesting take. I'm wondering how he is applying this logic. So I adhere to the scientific method, but the scientific method is for science. It's also for investigations, anything dealing with in the scientific realm where we're dealing with hard facts and deductions. Human beings aren't like that. So I'm just wondering if he himself applies the scientific method to every aspect of his life, or does he just mean using the scientific method where the scientific method should apply? So that's just another clarification for me.
And they are. I can produce mountains of evidence. That's the whole reason I'm even building the source document, which hopefully one day will be a force for good. But
again, I do apologize for stopping like every other second. I just want to make sure there is clarity across the board. A force for good. Now, I would love to see this source document once it's done. I am curious about it. And I am glad that he is looking to do some good for the world. Not knocking him for that. But in the same vein as we don't yet know what Mr. Nulli or Lord Intellectual think about the concepts of good and evil, what good is he trying to do with this source document? Just another clarification.
But at the same time, we have seen that logic is a rather ineffective tool because these are emotional arguments. But
And this is where I wanted to broach the topic of logic and emotion and reason. Like I said before, I do hold logic to be very valuable. But I also think in this case, reason would be more effective since it incorporates such things as emotion and intuition that are not set concepts or within a rigid data structure as logic would be or would require them to be.
drifting, but back to the original point, these people truly believe they are on the right side. So rather than just hating them for that, try and understand why they think that. And that ties into what we're seeing in this video here.
Stupidity hides behind duty, loyalty, morality, and tradition. Once thinking is outsourced, once people surrender their judgment to a crowd, an authority, or a system, anything becomes possible.
See, minor note of dispute there. Outsourced thinking. Yes, in this context, it would be a bad thing. But if you have a trusted source who is an expert in the field that pertains knowledge that you don't, generally it's okay if you exercise some level of critical thinking to take that. We don't have the time to be experts in every single field ourselves. So there's always going to be some level of offboarding to an authority or to someone who is educated and is aware of that particular field. One of the best ways you can determine a good source is, okay, have they covered anything that I am an expert in? And if they have, then you can see what their opinion or what their take on that was. And if that matches your own experience, or you realize that it is broadly correct, then you can extrapolate that out and say, okay, even if this person will not be 100% correct 100% of the time, based on my experience with them and my knowledge, I can see they were 80 to 90% correct in a field that I am familiar with, which probably means I can trust them in a field I am not familiar with. And as long as you recognize that that is a shortcut and that is shorthand, and should you ever be seriously challenged on it, you will need to do further research, then that air quote outsourced thinking isn't a bad thing. It is an efficient way to run, and it is necessary in life.
So I actually quite agree with Lord Intellectual here. Even intellectual men and women don't have the time or the resources to become experts in every facet of existence. It's just too much of a strain to devote one's life to becoming an expert in all things so that you can be completely self-reliant in all things. I would even agree that is why that religious order is necessary, since they can be the outsourced, his term, outsourced authority that can simplify the complexities of morality and ethics into an easily understood rule or rules for society to function. Because even at the intellectual level, I know quite a few intellectuals who do not have the adequate knowledge set to debate on morality and ethics. That is not their field. They have to outsource that sort of thinking, and that goes even further for the common man, or if you want to say the average person, and even below average intelligent person. We cannot expect them to be to govern their thinking in this type of regard. It's just too much work to demand of them, on top of them simply living their own lives. They have mouths to feed, they have to feed themselves, have shelter, maintain that shelter, have the ability to function in society. Believe it or not, people need relaxation and just general good social interactions that don't require them to be constantly self-reflective and in contemplation of every given existential crisis that goes on around them. It's just too much of a burden to bear. And so I would actually posit that a good majority of the idiocracy that we are starting to see spring up, and a good majority of the lack of morality, comes from a place where I would say atheists and nihilists have put too much question in against religion itself for being a religious structure, and asking that those people, that their followers question the same religious structure. But because not everyone has the capacity of self-reflection that intellectuals do, they are then left without any moral source to outsource that thinking. And without the time and energy to do all of that self-reflecting, we then see a degradation of morality within society, simply because it is what is convenient, what is the most expedient way of solving my issues today. Whereas in society past, we saw that even though something was more expedient or more fulfilling to do in the now, people would refrain from it because they had that moral authority to lean on for certain things. Just from the Christian standpoint, you have your rules of thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not lie. These things, while someone of intellect could break these concepts down into why we shouldn't do these things, and be more self-conscious of the rules instead of just taking them at face value. For the common man, for the average person, these moral precepts would simply be their go-to. They could easily identify, oh, while stealing isn't, or while stealing this thing would be more convenient for me, I should not do that. That is the moral precept that I've been given, and that is what good is. That is what the moral authority says, so I shouldn't do it. And they could move on without having to wrestle with that idea for longer than is necessary for their time and their energy. So, yeah, that is as far as this video will go. I'm hoping to cover the rest of the video, but I've already gone into 40 minutes of this topic, and I don't want to wear my viewers out. So yeah, I plan on making this part 1 and possibly a 3-parter, depending on how much time I spend dissecting the rest of this topic. But thank you all for joining me, and I hope to see you in part 2 and possibly part 3. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.